Well, the FBI is willing to offer you what amounts to be a get out of jail free card in exchange for information that could be used to prosecute Mr. Marchetti.
Feds want me to snitch.
Now let's talk about the clown world of power. If you're wondering who are the clowns, well, it's this man here and law enforcement. I do think it does need to be a hot topic of discussion because Garcia does seem to be ramping things up from his end, his investigation and his theory. But all jokes aside, even though Unique called Garcia a clown, even though there's been plenty of clowns from law enforcement over the years of power, because they can rarely make their cases stick, there have been a few rare wins, and there have also been a few very good detectives in the world of power. In terms of just raising Kanan, Detective Shannon Beck was a very good detective. In fact, if she was actually Garcia's partner instead of Detective Howard, we'd be talking about a very different raising Kanan. We'd be saying case closed. Most of these guys would probably be in handcuffs, but then we'd also be talking about a very different show. So I guess there is a fine balancing act. I do also hope come the end of Raising Kanan some of these guys do end up in prison. I think it'd be very good to have a few characters still alive in the timeline of Power Origins, and who knows, still also alive in the present day where they could potentially pop up in a new spin-off. With that being said, in this breakdown we'll be talking about law enforcement and how Garcia seems to be targeting Unique. Will he manage to get a win that he wants come the end of Season 4? If so, will it be Unique? Will it be someone else? Or will law enforcement be left with egg on their faces just like before? We're also going to be running through how Rock could potentially use law enforcement to get the upper hand, very similar to how she's done before. So definitely a lot to unpack for a topic I don't think we've discussed for a while, which is all things law enforcement in all things Raising Kanan Season 4. Now there are a few important things we do have to remember from the beginning of Season 4. Back in 402, the police commissioner told the media and journalists that these murders and everything that went down back in 310 at the warehouse was committed by foreign nationals. However, Captain Baptiste knew that couldn't be further from the truth, and he set Detective Garcia on a mission to get to the bottom of this case. Captain Baptiste doesn't have too long left in his office, and before he leaves, he wants his case closed. He doesn't want to be retiring with this case still hanging over his head. There's not just one dead cop, but two, although Shannon Beck is still considered a suicide, and I don't think that will ever be resolved. But Garcia was given free rein, press upon any of his confidential informants, strong-arm the people in the streets, do what he needs to do to get this case closed. Now early on in Season 4, when Rock's lawyer was alive, Andre Barnes, he mentioned as far as they were concerned, the task force had been disbanded, they were no longer looking into the Thomases, and they no longer needed to be concerned. Of course, they still had to be very careful going forward, because they didn't want to end up being back on law enforcement's radar. But in terms of this situation and this particular case, as far as they were concerned, the case was dead. However, they actually didn't know that Garcia was still on the hunt for answers. He's a one-man band. There was also the small matter of Rock's get out of free jail card. Towards the end of 402, Andre let her know that the feds were looking into Stefano Marchetti, and if she were to ever provide information that helped them convict Stefano, law enforcement would show their gratitude. So I definitely just want you guys to keep that in mind. We're going to come back around to that in just a second, in terms of how Rock could still come back to this and use this to swing the chess game in her way. But first, what does Garcia think? Or what does he believe to be true?
My guess is the three of you were in business together, and then there was a double cross, and they turned on you. Sent you on vacation, and then you came back and killed them.
Now Garcia believes that Unique was the one who killed both Detective Howard and his brother Ronnie Mathis. He thinks they were in business together. They then turned on him, sent him away on vacation, but then Unique came back and surprised them. That's his investigation, his theory, and that's what he's running with. So, in his mind, Unique is the main suspect of his investigation since his return. Now he then followed this up by going to see Duke. At the time, Duke lost their appetite and didn't even bother to entertain Garcia. However, we know he is going to be back to try and ruffle some feathers, and honestly if I were in Duke's shoes, I would actually talk to law enforcement. Not talk to them in the sense give them any kind of information or snitch. We know that's not Duke, she's no snitch. But talk to him in the sense, get a feeling of what his theory is. Does he kind of let anything slip in terms of what he's investigating and who he believes is behind the Ronnie Mathis and Detective Howard murders? Because at this point in time, Rock believes this case has been deaded. That's why we went through what we went through earlier on in the breakdown, when Andre told Rock that this case was no longer a problem. From Rock's point of view, law enforcement aren't investigating what happened at the warehouse. If she does know that bit of information, then that's something she can definitely use. Now I do think Duke has to tell Rock she was approached by Detective Garcia. When she was approached by Detective Burke back in Season 1, she told Rock, and what did we see before? Jukebox actually sent Detective Burke down the wrong direction. If Duke does tell Rock that Garcia approached her, which I do think is relatively easy to assume she will, could Rock actually ask Duke to do something very similar to what we saw in Season 1? Find out what Garcia knows, talk to him and give him a little something to chase, find out what he's investigating and who he's investigating. I do think Rock needs to somehow get ahead of this situation with Stefano, Unique, Snaps and Pop, Phil Russo, and also law enforcement. At this moment in time, she's just lost Joyce Thomas. Marvin's created a complete mess. Her empire's on the verge of collapse. Unique seems to be targeting Kanan, and so is Snaps and Pop. They're targeting her biggest weakness, and will probably blame Rock for all the shit they've done just to twist his mind even more. So, what does Rock do against those who are playing dirty? She's gonna have to fight fire with fire, and if that means using law enforcement, then so be it. We've seen her do it before in Season 1. In Season 1, she created the master plan where she had Kanan wearing Unique's jacket, putting this back in his cupboard for law enforcement to find, which did set him up for the fall of Detective Howard's shooting. So, could she create another master plan in Season 4 involving law enforcement? If and when Duke tells her Garcia's on the hunt, can she use this bit of information and actually get the upper hand? Back in 407, Marvin said they needed to make a move on Stefano, a big move on a big player, but it does need to be done before Stefano turns on the Thomases and makes an alliance with Phil Russo. At this moment in time, what does Rock know in terms of law enforcement and who they're currently watching? Stefano Marchetti. So, could she give Garcia a bone? This is where I do want to come back to the conversation she had with Andre back in 402. Could this genuinely come full circle? Could she tell Duke just to feed some information to Garcia? This is who they should be looking at. This is the mastermind and this is the guy calling the shots. Because Rock does have to get ahead of this somehow. And why not send law enforcement in Stefano's direction? She keeps her hands clean and she gets rid of one of her problems. We know what's been said about Rock before. She was working undercover as a CI for Howard when she was a minor. We've also seen her feed Howard information back in Season 1 in regards to Unique's re-up. We then saw her set up Unique for Howard's shooting towards the end of Season 1. It's not beyond the realms of possibility to suggest Rock could use law enforcement again to do her dirty work. At the end of the day, it is what it is. She's playing in a man's world, a very dog-eat-dog world. And if she doesn't, these guys are just going to betray her first. That's how I do think Rock could potentially start to regain a bit of control and the upper hand in a very intricate chess game we have in Season 4. Just like I mentioned with the situation with Marvin and the Italians, Rock's organization, Lou's dark turn, and how he reached tipping point, it does look like there will be a tipping point for law enforcement in the coming 2 episodes, in 9 and 10. And if I were in Rock's shoes, if and when Duke comes to her with that information of how Garcia approached her, she needs to tell Duke, go and feed him a bone, go and feed him this information, go and send him down Unique's direction or Stefano's direction, mention Stefano's name, send him down the Italian's direction. In my opinion, that's how Rock needs to play this situation, because it's gone beyond the point of using guns and fists. She's not going to win this war in that way. Season 4 has been a very intricate chess game with people making very calculated moves, and she's going to have to make hers if she has any kind of chance of coming out on top. Now last but not least, the last topic is CIs, confidential informants. Does Garcia have anybody else under his ranks that could potentially be working closely with any of these guys in the streets? We've spoken about Imani Okoye before. She does remain as someone to keep on our watch list, but could they spring up a surprise? Could there be anybody else planted in any of these organizations that could give Garcia the edge? Apart from Imani Okoye, I can't think of anybody else at this moment in time. I don't think we've seen enough of anyone else, but definitely still something to keep in mind. You just never know with power. But that's a breakdown of where we are with law enforcement at this moment in time, and how Garcia has his eyes set on Unique. So, could Rock use this to her advantage? Could she potentially have Jukebox find out what Garcia knows? Or even give him something that sends him down in Unique or Stefano's direction? We have seen her do it before, and I do think she will need to play a bit dirty to win. She's gonna have to fight fire with fire. It's the only way. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. In terms of this situation with law enforcement, it definitely is picking up a lot of speed, and something is gonna have to give. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.